Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today we're going to Masech the Sukkah Daf Mem Dalid. We are going to begin on Mem Dalid Amud Aleph, about 7 lines from the top. Normally a Bailu Rabba. He asked the following question: Ma'ishna lulav de'avdinan le shiva zeichel mikdash, u'ma'ishna Rabba de'lo avdinan la shiva zeichel mikdash. Of course, we know Bizman Hazeh, even without the Beis Hamikdash, as we saw in the previous Mishnah, we will take the lulav and esrog for 7 days, and we do it zeichel mikdash. However, when it comes to the arava, the mitzvah of the arava, which is also for 7 days, we don't do it for 7 days. Of course, on Hoshana Rabbah, we are engaged in that particular ceremony with the aravos, but it's not a 7-day ceremony. So how come we make this special zeichel mikdash for the lulav, but not when it comes to the arava? So the Gemara answers like this: Amle hoyel v'adam yotzi yedei chavasa b'rava shebelulav. The truth is, you could kill two birds with one stone, if you will, because you are taking a rava for 7 days. If we instituted taking the lulav for 7 days, in the lulav, one of the arba minim is the rava, so therefore you kind of fulfill it too. No, that can't be. The only reason why you're taking the rava is because it's connected to the lulav. It's not a separate concept, which is what we were talking about, the mitzvah of taking the rava. So what we do is we pick it up the first time and we say, I'm doing this for the arba minim, and then we pick it up a second time and we do it with zecher for the arava. So that's what we do. The problem is, sounds like a great concept, a great academic answer, but it's not true practically. We do not see that we actually do that. So the question is why. So Omer Rav Zvid Mishmei the Rabba Lulav Diraisa. When it comes to lulav, it's in the Torah. Avdinan Shiva Zeichel Mikdash, and therefore we institute for 7 days Zeichel Mikdash. Harava the Rabbanan Luavdin Lo Shiva Zeichel Mikdash. However, when it comes to the arava, it's something which is only a din d'Rabbanan, and therefore because of that, we don't do it zeichel mikdash. Only do it to rice zeichel mikdash. Shloman. So, like, who's this according to? This is according to Abishol, the Arbi Nachal Ksiv. When we darshan the psukim of Arbi Nachal regarding the Rava, why is it written in this lashon? So Ksiv Shtayim, it's written in a plural language to tell us achas lulav, achas hamikdash. One is referring to the lulav, but the other is referring to the mikdash, which means it does have a mentioning in the Torah. So a rava actually is a din deraisa. Having the rava taken in the mikdash was a din deraisa. So according to him, it's not a derabanan. Il rabbanan hilchas gemirla. According to the rabbanan, it's not din derabanan. It's a halach moshe Sinai, as we saw this previously. Diyam Rav Asiyam Rav Yochim Shem Rav Nechunya Ish Bikas Beis Chorson Esther and the Tios, which we talked about the dinim of not using your trees or your field on the Shemitah, and we even have a Tosefus, we add a little bit onto the Shemitah year that we start already from before Rosh Hashanah. However, when it comes to these 10 trees which are perfectly spaced in a field of 50 by 50, so you could go all the way until that point, a Rava Nisach HaMayim and the water libations in the Beis Hamikdash during Sukkot, halacha moshe Sinai. So, and it says explicitly one of them is a Rabba. So clearly it's not a din d'Rabbanan. Ela Omer Azvin Mishmei de Rabba. What is the distinction between lulav and a Rabba? The following way: lulav the Islay Ikr min Atar Bigvulin Avdin and Lo Shiva Zeichel Mikdash. Not only is there a requirement of taking the lulav in the Beis Hamikdash, but also B'Gvulin. The Torah actually also mentions, as we saw in the previous Amud, how we allude from the Psukim that there's actually a requirement even B'Gvulin outside of the Beis Hamikdash to take the lulav, and therefore because of that, Avdin L'Shiva Zeichel Mikdash. So therefore we could continue to do so, because even outside of the Beis Hamikdash, there was a Torah obligation to take the lulav and esrog. as Rashi says, Iker Yom Echad, Mia Yeshla Shirish. There is at least some hint, at least on the first day, to take the lulav rather, on the first day, even in the Gvulin. However, says the Gemara, Rabbi Leispo Iker Minatayro B'Gvulin Lavdin and Shiv Zech LaMikdash. There is no Zecher LaMikdash when it comes to the Rava, because there is no mitzvah at all, as Rashi says, about Rava Ein Lo Shum Sharish Minatayro B'Gvulin. There's no concept that you should be taking the Rava at all outside of the Beis HaMikdash. Okay, fine. In the Beis HaMikdash, Arvei Nachals, it says, in fact, very explicitly, Arvei Nachal, we say Achas Lulav Achas LaMikdash. Dafka the Arab is in the Mikdash, but there is no makar in the Torah about Gvulin. Okay. Amar Reish Lakish. Kohanim Bali Mumin. Now, when a Kohen is a Bal Mum, in which, even though normally a Bal Mum isn't allowed in certain areas of the Beis HaMikdash, Nechnasim Ben Ha'ulam U'Mizbeach. We allow them to go between the Ulam room, which is the room which is right before you enter into the Kodesh, and the Mizbeach. We know the Mizbeach Achitzon, between the Ulam and the Mizbeach. So they are actually allowed to go in that area, Kedei Lotzeis Barava. In order that they are able to be mekayim the mitzvah of a Rava, we will allow these people who are Bali Mum, even though again they're normally not allowed to go into that area. Says Rashi, Avhem Dechoikim Menechnasim Lahakib Baraglehem Varava Biyadam, with the Rava in their hands, the Ashul Hakif Shal Yichnasu Beina Ulam Mizbeach V'chol Hashana Asurin Lichanisham. They weren't allowed to enter into that area. However, we allowed them on this. There's a dispensation dafka on this time for the mitzvah of a Rabbah. Amar Rav Yochanan mi Amra. Who said this? Mi Amra. Ha'inu Amar. You yourself are the one that said it. Yom Rav Asim Rav Yochanan. It's in your name. Mishum Rav Nechunya Ish Bikas Beis Chorsan Esentias Arava Misachamayim Halchamash Mesinai. So, what do you mean? Who said there's this concept that there's some type of chayv, that in order to fulfill the obligation, we're even allowing a Baal Mum to do it? What do you mean? You're the one that says it. Halach Moshe Messinai. Elami Amr ben Netila. What he's saying is, who says that the chov of the Kohanim, that which we're talking about, is benetila, of actually just picking up the arava? Dilma b'zakifa. Maybe we're talking about putting it over on the mizbeach. And Rashi says, "V'koin echad zaytva al yidei hakol in chayv al kuam." When it comes to zakifa, it's not required that everyone does zakifa. One kohen puts it by the mizbeach. So mi amr bali mumin. How do you know we're talking about bali mumin? Dilma b'tamimim. Maybe it's only a tamim that's able to do this. Fine. Itmar Rav Yochanan Rav Yeshua ben Levi Chada Omer Rav Yisod Neviim Chada Omer Rav Minhag Neviim. There's a machlokas between them. Do we say that this whole notion of taking the Rava is it considered to be Yisod Neviim, as Rashi says, Tekanas Neviim Achroinim Chagi Zachariah Malachi? These people, these great sages, were the ones that were misakin various tekanos among the Anshe Knesset Gedayla? Or do we say that the Rava is just a minhag? Says Rashi, Hanhigu es we had the custom with the Rava. But tiknalahem, it's not that it was actually misakin. And the Rashi says, a very important Rashi here, the nafkamina, what's the difference? It's a minhag, yisot, the low boy bracha, the lekel meimer v'tzivanu. You can't say if it's a minhag, then you can't say the word v'tzivanu. Dafil b'chlal l'saser leisa. So again, that is the chiluk, whether or not we say a Rabbi is so neviim or minhag neviim, whether one needs to say a bracha. To stein Rav Yochanan who the Yom Yisay neviim. Why? The Yom Rav Abba Yom Rav Yochanan and a Rabbi Yisay neviim who to stayim, which is pretty clear that he's the one that says it. Amrli Rav Zeo Rav Abai Miyam Rav Yochanan Hachi. Does Rav Yochanan really say this din? After all, Miyam Rav Yochanan, but we already once again established Mishum Rav Nechunya Yishpikus Beis Horson and since he's a Rav of Nisachamayim Kolach Moshe Messinai. So what do you mean? He says that it's Yisod Neviim. What do you mean it's Yisod Neviim? That's Allah Moshe Messinai. So Ishtaimim Kishachad, it was delayed for a moment in contemplation of the question. The Omer Shacham Chos V'Yistum. It was forgotten and then it was later instituted. So in other words, Really, of course, it's halacha Moshe Sinai. However, what ended up happening is it became forgotten, this whole concept of the Rava, and then it became instituted, and therefore it became Yisod Nevi'im. The Nevi'im reinstituted it, and therefore a bracha is necessary. In fact, the Gemara, Miyom Rabbi Yochanan Hachi. Does Rabbi Yochanan really say this concept? Rabbi Yochanan Dolchoin Amri Dolchoin. That which is theirs is that which I thought was ours is really theirs. So what is this statement? So basically what Rabbi Yochanan was saying is, I thought the Torah was yours. That's what Rabbi Yochanan said. He was saying this to his students regarding Rav Kahana, who arrived from Bavel. But now he says, I see, now it's actually theirs. So we see that Torah was not forgotten in Bavel. The whole concept is, according to Rabbi Yochanan, Shachum, it became forgotten and then reinstituted. What do you mean? Clearly, he sees, as Rashi says here, Torah was not forgotten, because he's complementing the great knowledge of Torah that exists in Bavel. So obviously it wasn't something which became forgotten. Let's look at question 7, which we're in the middle of a question. So Ma Pirish Rabbi Yochanan Dolchoin Amri Dolchoin. So he says like this: Livnei Eretz Yisrael. He was speaking to the people in Israel. I thought the Torah was by you, Shol Galisim, because you never actually were exiled, you never left. And therefore, because you didn't have to leave Israel, so therefore you had a stronger ability to be able to focus on Torah. I actually see now that the Torah is in Bavel, that they have great ability to be able to understand and comprehend Torah. Again, it's a question, because how can we say that it became forgotten? It wasn't forgotten. So how do you say it was Halacha Moshe Sinai, it became forgotten, then became Yisod? So Lakashas, we continue to lock them down with Aleph. That's not a problem at all. It just depends on where. Kan b'mikdash, kan b'gvulin. Rashi, in the mikdash, the Rabbi was taken Halacha Moshe Sinai. However, in Gvulin, that was Yisod Nevi'im. Therefore, the taking of the Rava actually, again, it requires a bracha, even though it's being taken outside. Amr Ami, a Rava Sri Chashir. The Rava needs to have a measurement, a certain measurement, and the Gemara is going to explain what that means. The Eino Nitelas El B'fnei Atzma. It cannot be taken except by itself. In other words, you can't have anything else attached to it, because we need to show that the mitzvah is specifically by the Rava. And you can't use the Rava in the lulav. So, if it already says you have to take it by itself, obviously you can't take the Rava with the lulav, because that's something else. You can't have the lulav with it. So, maybe the whole issue is if you didn't pick it up, put it down, pick it up again. Maybe, again, as we said, you pick up the lulav and esrog, and you do the mitzvah on the tilas lulav, put it down, now you pick it up. Even though it's true, maybe the lulav is still attached with a rava, but I'm doing it l'shem a rava. So maybe that's good. No, it cannot be done, because it has to be by itself. Actually, you could fulfill your obligation with the arava that's found in the lulav. Let's read these parentheses. The kamishira. So we said that the arava needs to have a certain measurement. So Amar Rav Nachman, gimel badi owen lachen. 3 wet or moist leaves. Rav Sheshes Amar feel echad uvad echad. Even 1 leaf and 1 branch. So echad uvad echad salchadaitach. All you have to do is just take either one. You can just take 1 leaf or 1 stem. El ema feel echad bivad echad. It has to be 1 leaf, but it has to be attached to the bod. Okay. So again, that's obviously more lenient than the 3. Question 8. Kama badi arava l'chol pachas noitan lasis nechvaso t'yisoid neviim. So one mandir says gimel badin, and one says bad echad. Weiter. Amr Ivo Havi communicated to Rebbe Lezer Bar Tzadok. So he's in front of Rebbe Lezer Bar Tzadok. I say Yahu Gavra Arava. So he brought this Arava. Come in front of him. Shockingly took it, and chavit, he started like banging on it, with this arava. V'loy berach, and he didn't say a bracha. So why did he not make a bracha? Ksaver minig neviim hu. As we said, that's the chiluk. If you hold minig neviim, then you don't say a bracha. If you hold yisai neviim, so when you take the arava, a bracha is necessary. Chavit, Rashi says, is lashon nanua, so actually shook. Abba v'chizkiah, these two great people were b'nei Baratia de Rav. They were the grandsons of Rav. I saw Rabbi kamei de Rav, so they brought an Rava in front of their grandfather. Chavit lo barich, chasaver minig neviim hu. Again, they understood from that it must be that he holds it to minig neviim, and therefore it wasn't necessary for you to take it with a bracha. Okay. Amar Ivo, so this is again the grandson of Rav. Having communicated made the Rabbi Lezer Bar Tzadok, was in front of Lezer Bar Tzadok. Askamei Hahu Gabra, a certain person came in front of him. Armalei said, Karatza Isli, cities I have for myself, Karam Isli and vineyards, Zais Isli, I have olive trees. The Asu B'nei Karasia, and the people in my city come, and Mikashkin Bikrame, and they are plowing in my vineyard. V'oichlin B'zais, and they're eating my olives. Arich o lo arich. Is this the proper way of what they're doing, or is it not proper? So how could they do such a thing? They're breaking an entry. It's stealing. So Rashi says one small detail: Mikashishkim b'karme oidrin es hakramim b'shvius. This is the Shemitah year when everything is hefker, so that's onus. But you have a bunch of poor people. They're coming and they're plowing his vineyards. He's eating his olives. The Rashi says, "B'schar chfiras hakramim," for the reward, the payment for plowing the fields. The einon mafkir laniyim, and they're not hefker to aniyim. Says Rashi, is this proper? Tov lasos keno loerich, lushan davar hagoin. Is this a proper conduct that's being done? So Armalei loy orich. This is not proper. Havi koshavik levi ozol. He should basically he should just leave it and go, right? And we're going to see that he actually he listened exactly to what he was told. So again, it wasn't orich, as Rashi says, since you are paying the workers miper shvius, you're not allowed to pay them for business transactions. Come on, we're going to see the plowing is not the issue. The issue is paying for this transaction, because it's hefker. So Omer Kado Havisi Dari Ba'ara Hada Mem Shnin. I was living here for 40 years. V'loi Chamisi Barinish Mahalich Ba'orichin Detiskun Kedin. And I've never seen a person that followed the exact way one is supposed to done, just like him. In other words, that he took the advice that he was not supposed to do that, and he followed it exactly. Hadar V'asi, he came back. Remalei, my maven, he says, what'd you do? So Remalei, after Zaysi, I made my grapes ownerless. L'chashuche, and I did this, to help the poor. The tain prati l'kashkushi kromim, and then I paid them for the fact that they plowed my fields. So it's okay, as you said, I was allowed to have them they could plow my fields on Shvius, but I can't pay them with the olives. I had to let them take the olives. However, I paid them. For the Gemara, how is this guy such a big tzaddik? How can you allow someone to plow your field on Shemitah? Kashkushi mishari, plowing and hoeing the field, l'char isn't allowed. Vatanya v'shvius tishmatenu tashtena. So what is that word? What do we learn out from these words? They're supposed to let it rest and lie. Tishmatena milakishkush. Beferish, you're supposed to refrain from hoeing and doing taking care of the field. Unatashtena unatashta milasalit. The person is not allowed to move rocks in order to be able to make the field better for the following year. So how we see beferish that Kashkesh is usher. So Amar Rab Ukba Barchama, as we often have an answer, we split it. Trei Kishkushi Havi. There's two different types of working. Stumi Pili, Chad Stumi Pili, the Chad Evruye Ilane. One is basically closing up different holes. Basically, if there's issues in the ground, so the field doesn't get destroyed or die and get destroyed. So as we're going to see, that's one act. Another one is actually strengthening the trees. So Avruya Aser, Stumi Pili Shari, you're not allowed to help the earth get stronger. That's something which is not allowed. Well, in this case, Avruya Ilane is piercing the earth's dirt. So that is Aser. That's an Aser, a forbidden form of hoeing. But covering the cracks is mutter, since it's only we only do so so it doesn't dry out. So by you again sealing the cracks, that's what was done over here, and therefore he was allowed to do it, and he paid them for their work. A person shouldn't travel so close to Shabbos, and even on Friday in general, not more than 3 parsecs. That's more than one should travel. They should basically be at their destination so that they don't get stuck on the road. The only time I say this is to the home. Says Rashi. The only issue is to the house. You're going to your home. They don't even have a clue that you're coming. They don't know. Are you coming this day, next month? So don't come on Friday so close. They're not going to be prepared. Right? You get home right before Shabbos, they're like, what are you doing here? Right? So they're going to be upset. However, if you're going to a hotel, you're not being saimech on anyone. You're bringing your own food, and therefore, because of that, you could travel even more than Gimel Prasais, because when you get there, you're the one that is aware that you are the one that has all the provisions needed for the Shabbos. It's going to tell you that even to your house, says Rashi, when you go to your house, Baruch Hashem, you have a pantry and food, and they have a bunch of matzah from Pesach. You can always eat, right? But when it comes to your house, even to get to your house, you shouldn't do this. And certainly when it comes to Shmiza, to some type of a hotel, that's a bigger issue, and therefore you definitely shouldn't travel to a hotel too far into Friday. This happened to me. I feel I couldn't even find a kaseda harsana. Rashi says it's suda muetes. It's a small meal. Dagim katanim metuganim bekemach b'shumin shalahan. It's a special dish with fish and flour and oil. Basically, this guy was in a lot of trouble. He had basically nothing to eat. All right, we're going to stop here. Let's see if we have a couple more questions. Ma nafkamina bein mandir a Rabbi minhag neviim bein lamandir a Rabbi yisay neviim. So the difference, as we said before, is whether or not a bracha needs to be said. TA 24. Madua belulav noitlam izman azeh shiva. So why do we take the lulav for 7 days nowadays? Zechel mikdash. And a Rava, we do not take it for 7 days. Zechel mikdash l'maskana. So TA 24, as we said, when it comes to the lulav, the Torah does mention, at least on the first day, there's an inyan of taking the lulav even bigvulin outside of the Beis Hamikdash. So therefore, we take it for 7 days. Mashen Kim the Rava, there is no mention. In fact, as we said, Arvi Nachal is Echad LaMikdash. There was only in the Mikdash was there a mitzvah of a Rava. So since there was no mitzvah of taking the Rava bigvulin, at least according to this pshat, so therefore it has no Iker min Torah. Of course, according to, as we saw on the top of Memdal and Medbeis, according to Rabbi Yochanan, he said on the Dilchain Amri Dilchain, he said the difference in the Mikdash was Halachah Moshe Sinai, and the Gvul was actually Yisai Nevi'im. Okay, so according to him, I'm not sure exactly if that question was how that question was answered. Okay. Question TB25. Ma nafkamina yima Rabbi Yisod v'imo minhag. So we said regarding bracha, and then the Eza a Rabba kulam lo pligi, in which a Rabba does everyone agree? So again, the nafkamina is you say a bracha. In the Mikdash, everyone holds that it was a halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Ad ka.